Welcome, everyone, to Comic Book Corner. I'm Dan Delatorre. Thanks for joining this evening. We begin with a piece from Variety online, and it was a piece by Tatiana Siegel. And the piece was in regards to the MCU apparently having a meeting in Las Vegas sometime last month. And the meeting, according to the article, refers to the MCU, including Kevin Feige, was in attendance of this meeting. That they were normally very cocky and very confident in their delivery for upcoming shows and so forth. They had a different feel this go around. There was a lot of apprehension, a lot of doubt, and almost a sense of panic regarding what the future lies with the MCU. There are a few elements that they brought forward. One is that the ticket sales are simply way down across the board, and I don't think it's necessarily their content. Everything post-pandemic has affected everything, including movie ticket sales. People are fearful to go out still. They'd like to just watch their entertainment at home rather than go out to a theater, which I think is too bad because I still love going to the theater. But again, sales are way down, and the biggest problem moving forward, at least they see, is the doubt regarding Jonathan Majors, who is playing Kang the Conqueror. Now, we'll talk about that in short order, but let's first talk about the Marvels movie, which dropped just recently. The Marvels, it didn't do well. I mean, they didn't expect much regarding this particular film. I think the estimation was $85 to $90 million for their opening weekend. They barely made a little bit more than half of that because, well, there's a whole variety of reasons, and let's just break them down in no particular order. First and foremost, look at the cast that's here. I mean, there are no big stars regarding Hollywood celebrities. The biggest star is Brie Larson herself, and Brie Larson has her own problems in the MCU. Being an aficionado and, again, a time traveler, as a shout out to my last episode, I knew what to look for regarding the Captain Marvel character, and Brie Larson simply wasn't it. She didn't fit. I have nothing personal against her, and maybe she'll warm up as time goes on regarding her role in the MCU. But again, she was the lead actress, and the other two actresses I actually liked. I remember the other Captain Marvel from WandaVision. I think she did quite well, and I forget the actress's name. And the other Ms. Marvel from her show from Netflix. That was not Netflix. It was Disney Plus rather. That was actually rather entertaining. So I have nothing against the actresses, but the biggest problem with this particular movie was its writing, and in particular their director. Their director was a woman named Nina DaCosta. Now, Nina DaCosta, I've looked at her background. In fact, a person who did a really good piece on this was David from Comic Book Investors. He had a really good piece. Shout out to David. His piece dropped about 3 weeks ago because he and his wife did see it. And he pointed out this lady here as one of the problems with choosing her as the director. She had no real experience regarding comic books. I don't think she's ever read a comic. And the problem was she may have had success in other areas regarding entertainment, but putting her in charge of a major Marvel motion picture was a mistake. Basically, what happened was the movie, and again, I've made a decision not to go see it. This is the first MCU movie that I'm openly saying I'm not going to spend $20 or whatever it is to go see it and sit there and not be entertained. I've already seen the synopsis of it. I won't feel like I'm missing anything because, again, the story was written very poorly and directed very poorly. It seemed to have almost like a feminist message or something, and it kind of reminded me, and again, not having seen the movie, of the direction they pulled with the She-Hulk series. She-Hulk was basically a chick flick series. It was 6 or 7 episodes, I think. It was entertaining at the time, but I have no intention of re-seeing that. Now, there's no real reason to look into this. There's nothing groundbreaking in this particular movie. And I think what's going on, in part, with Disney is that they are trying to be more diverse. And there is sort of this, what's the phrase? When you want to bring people in just to say you have a female actor, female director, female writer, that sort of thing, or enter transgender issues or something along those lines, you become a social justice warrior. And if that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. That is up to you. I would never, ever dismiss anyone who wants to have a cause. The problem with that is that sort of cause. If you want to be a social justice warrior, the arena is not at the theater. Their arena is politics. Take that somewhere else, but don't bring this into the MCU or any other entertainment and expect it to sell. So if that's the direction, it seems like that is what has happened here. It's no wonder that the sales are way down. Now, there's been talk. I'm not just going to focus just on this particular movie. All of Phase 4 seemed like it was going away from its original storyline. As I've pointed out before, there's plenty of storyline right behind me in these great comics. Most of them are Marvel. The stories are already written. The characters are already displayed. The costumes, the setting, everything is there. All you have to do is open the comic, read it, and understand it. Why you want to do that? That's what your audience wants to see. That's what I want to see. I don't believe I would see it in this particular movie. I was disappointed in many of the movies in Phase 4. Again, they need to get back to their basis, because, again, if you don't think that the MCU is invincible and they could go to the wayside, that's not true. There's one great example I'd like to bring forward. Anheuser-Busch, the famous beer company. They dominated the beer market for decades, many decades, because they produced a really decent and reliable product. It was affordable. People liked it. And one of their biggest sellers was Bud Light. Well, just recently, within this past year, one of their advertisement vice presidents decided to put this particular character on, Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney is a very flamboyant transgender activist, and that's fine if that's what that person wants to do. But the problem was there was one particular commercial, and only one commercial, produced by Budweiser or Bud Light, and it offended the entire audience. Not that making judgments on this particular person, but the person responsible for it was a woman named Alyssa, and I'm going to butcher her name, Hennerstein. Try to say that 3 times fast. She was the marketing director behind that whole thing. And her idea was to sort of diversify and get more people to drink Bud Light. And she thought, well, let's go to the transgender community and see how that works out. It didn't work out at all. Anheuser-Busch took a nosedive. Bud Light sales dropped by tens of billions of dollars, and it was a gigantic disaster. All because one woman may have had good intentions, but instead of spreading diversity within her particular audience, she offended most of them and turned everyone off, and it became a stigma, and it's still a stigma to this day. Budweiser and Anheuser-Busch has yet to recover from this mistake. It was just a stupid idea, and I bring this up not to ridicule the transgender community, but again, you have to understand your audience. When you have something like an alcoholic beverage, or you go see a movie regarding a superhero theme, you're not there thinking about politics or anything else. You're there to be entertained, or you're there to enjoy time with your friends, and you want to forget the troubles of your day, which is why you would drink in the first place. And so this person here, this Alyssa Hernsch, I'm not going to try to pronounce her name anymore. This person here made a horrible mistake. In fact, I think she simply stepped away from Anheuser-Busch altogether, but the damage is done. The damage is totally done. And if that direction is where Disney is going with Marvel and also Star Wars, you could say the same thing about the Star Wars people and that franchise. There is sort of a feminism and sort of a feminist flavor, if you will, with some of the new movies. And a lot of the Star Wars people are no different than the Marvel people or Star Trek people. They know what they want. They know what that particular genre should be, and that's all they want, and not anything else to sidetrack it. So the other element with Marvel too is not just the possible social issues they're trying to bring forward. Again, the biggest problem they had is they seem to have forgotten how they became successful in the first place. When Iron Man 1 first showed up in 2008, it was very much along the lines of the book that's right behind me, Tales of Suspense 39. It was a dynamite story by Stan Lee and who is it? His brother Lieber, I forget his first name. But all these Silver Age books have such a presence, and they were so powerful. The Silver Age was the most powerful element in comic story writing in history. Keep in mind, back in the mid-'60s, when Stan Lee finally got off the ground with the Marvel Silver Age, he did something that was thought impossible at the time. He beat out DC sales. DC was a powerhouse that had survived the 1950s with a book from Dr. Frederick Wertham, The Seduction of the Innocent, which almost destroyed the comic book industry. But Stan Lee used groundbreaking ideas, and it was hit after hit after hit for the better part of 10 years. Now, the MCU was drawing off of that ability when they first started in phases 1, 2, and 3, and at phase 4, they seem to have gone on their own. This is again, they need to go back to their basics, and they still have a lot of talent, and they can still pull off, I think, some successful shows coming up. Speaking of successful shows, let's give a great example of one they just recently did, the Loki show. The Loki show just ended, season 2 ended a few weeks ago. This was dynamite, out of the box thinking, very creative. There was really nothing else like it, but again, they stayed down to earth. They used the characters properly, and again, they had great success. I think if this was made into a movie, it would have absolutely dominated, even with the difficulties in Hollywood today. Let's do a quick review of Loki. What happened with season 2? If you remember season 1, it ended with Kang the Conqueror telling both Sylvie and Loki that he has taken over time, but he's tired of being on that particular throne, if you will, and he wanted them to take this over and pick it up from there so he could do, well, whatever. Now, what we learned in season 2 with Loki was that as he started doing time shifting, and I'm not certain how that came about, if Kang gave him that ability or whatever, he started to assess what was what. By the end of episode 6, he had discovered basically all there was to know that Kang had, and his whole variants had discovered for centuries upon end, that they had discovered the ability to stop and control time. Basically, Kang's powers were technical. He created something called a time loom. The time loom is something that sort of controls time and doesn't let other timelines enter. It's basically mechanical. And again, centuries upon centuries of technology gave this man power. Keep in mind, the last episode in season 1, when Sylvie and Kang first, when Sylvie and Loki first meet Kang, and they're going up to his office in the elevator, Loki looks at him with great surprise and says to him, "You're just a man, flesh and blood." He couldn't believe that a mortal could have this much power. Now, in season 2, basically he discovers how that power comes into being, and again, it's all technological. So after Loki spends centuries upon centuries to study and educate himself regarding Kang's ability, he begins to take it over. And Kang looks a bit surprised when, for example, Loki learns how to stop time. And there's a bit of a standoff, if you will. If you didn't see it, I did. What I think the whole synopsis or the whole conclusion is for Loki season 2 is that Loki is not human. He's not mortal. Again, he says to Sylvie in episode 4 or 5, because Sylvie says, if we're going to do this, we're playing God. And Loki turns to her and says, well, we are gods. Remember, he's a frost giant, but I tend to suspect he's more than a frost giant. I think he's partially Asgardian. I don't know if anyone ever explained that in the modern comics. They never did in the Bronze, Silver, and Copper Age. But keep in mind, he's an extremely powerful entity. For example, in Silver Surfer issue number 4, he tackles the Silver Surfer himself, Herald of Galactus. He matches him, and one of the most powerful beings in Marvel. They match each other's power blow for blow. And also in the Avengers Defenders War, he and Dormammu team up to intercept a message from the Black Knight. And they were able to comprehend the message instantly, change it instantly, and send it on its way. They both boast that only powerful minds such as theirs could have possibly comprehended this. I bring all this up because Loki, as soon as he realizes what to do, he knows his power is far greater than with Kang. And with the magical dampener technology that they had in the TVA was shut down, he could be the Loki that he wanted to be. And he used the powers that he had naturally. So see, he was so powerful, he walked out to the time loom without any armor, without any protection, because he knew his godlike power could protect him. He goes to the center of everything and literally becomes the arbiter of the multiverse. So only something that Kang could have, that Loki could have done, Kang could have never done that. Why? Because they're mortal. He was mortal, all his variants are mortal, and now they're dealing with someone that is far more powerful than they are in the form of Loki. We'll see where this goes moving forward. But I watched Tom Hiddleston, he has owned Loki. He's owned the Loki character, a brilliant actor. He's taking a break for a while because he's been at it, he says, for 14 years, and he's pretty tired. But let's just say that Loki's final scene in the MCU is right here. You'll only hear this from yours truly because, again, my time traveling ability. The character Loki started in Journey into Mystery 85 inside a tree, and he is freed because he tricks Heimdall into freeing him. And the final scene we see with Loki is inside yet another tree, a tree called, let's see if I can pronounce this correctly, Yggdrasil. And that is the tree of the world, which we've seen in the Thor movie, the first Thor movie, and in a reference to the first Captain America movie. So interesting how things begin and end at the same level. Anyway, let's go to our picks of the week. And again, I'm not doing any picks because I'm not doing any picks that you should pick up. I'm just profiling some of the comics that I picked up. The reason why is with the misdirection of the MCU, Spec, which used to be super hot a year and a half, 2 years ago, that's pretty much gone. Don't bother to listen to any Spec until or if the MCU gets its act together. This also goes for the DC universe, by the way. DC is still, we don't know where they're going to go right now. I mean, with the writer's strike just now being solved, we'll see what happens when the pieces are picked up. But I want to show you, in no particular order, some of the great deals that I was able to find. And you might find some similar deals if you look hard enough, because, again, the prices are way, way down. Let's start here with this very first one. This one I just got within the last week. This is Hulk 168. You can see it's an 8.0 white pages. This is the first appearance of the Harpy. I had loved the Hulk run for the longest time. This is Herb Trimpe, one of the most unappreciated artists in all of Marvel. He was one of the hardest working men. I have a rare, by the way, sketch from Herb Trimpe. It's a one of a kind, and I'll never get rid of that. But I only paid, I think, God, it wasn't much for it. Was it $65, $70 for this particular issue? Maybe $80, but that's still a steal. That's 75% cheaper of what it was a year and a half ago. And if you find these, go ahead and get them. You can't go wrong with that. To have that in your collection. The Harpy has become more prominent as time has gone on, certainly in the modern age. And also the storyline, that whole storyline with the Hulk from the run from 150 all the way to 190 is great reading, or 200, I should say, is great reading. Next, we have, what else do we have here? This one here. This is Journey to Mystery 105. Now, this is not a key. This is Thor fighting, who was that again? It says right there, the Cobra and Mr. Hyde. It's not a key issue. It's just a great filler run. But again, that is well over 50 years old. And look how beautiful that is. I say, actually, that's pushing 60 years old. CGC gave it a 5.5, but look how brilliant the cover is, that bright yellow. The reason why they give it such a low rating, you won't see, I didn't profile the back of it. There's a tiny little watermark at the back. So any slight water damage, CGC will knock that down about 2 grades. So that should be about a 7.5. I paid maybe $50 for this, if that. So, I mean, you can't beat that, given that someone had to pay the money to have it graded and shipping and all the rest of it. So, again, deals are to be had if you're patient enough to look. Next, we have... this one is very, very low grade. It's probably a 1.5 at best. This is Tales of Suspense number 47, the first appearance of the Melter. Look how it's kind of silly, and you look at the you can see Tony Stark's arm with his armor melting away. Why isn't that arm isn't burned to death, or it's burned off? I don't know. Who knows? But again, that was sort of the hokiness of the beginning Silver Age. But still, it's a great comic to have. And the price I paid for that, I think I paid $29 for it. So I couldn't pass it up. I've never owned it before. It goes into my collection. And maybe I'll look for a higher grade. But, that was one that I saw. And I thought, this is good enough. If I saw it at an LCS for that price, I would have bought it hands down. Because, again, you can't beat these old classics. Next, we have this one here. This is the biggest one I picked up recently. This is Fantastic Four number 49. The first full appearance of Galactus. Now, I looked at this particular book. I was certainly in the market for it. This book was a gaping hole in my collection. I've owned Fantastic Four 48 and 50 for the longest time. I was looking at one of these. That's a 3.5. I saw one for about $1,100 or $1,200, and I almost pulled the trigger on it. And I thought, oh, I'll wait. I passed it up. And then the prices came way, way down. The asking price for this particular book was $600, and I submitted an offer of $550, and the guy said, "It's yours." And so I'm delighted to have it for a much reasonable price. I don't need the 9.8 or the super high grade. That presents very, very well, and I'm happy to have it in my collection. Everyone, in the next episode, let's see where we are by this time next month, because with the writer's strike over, the dust is going to have to settle, because the MCU is starting over again. Same with the DC universe. They've got both entities have a lot of work ahead of them, and with Marvel now, the story that came out, by the way, earlier this morning, that they are going to stay with Kang. Their problem is, are they going to stay with Jonathan Majors as Kang, because he still has a trial coming up? I'm tending to think that Majors is going to be fine with all this. I mean, unlike Ezra Miller from DC with the Flash, Ezra Miller has a lot of history of troubles with the law, and he has a lot of accusations far more serious than Jonathan Majors. I think Majors is going to be just fine, because he has no track record of troubles with the law. He seems like a straight shooter. This may be a misunderstanding or someone trying to take advantage. We don't know. But the MCU is very, very nervous, going back to the Variety piece, because they have literally billions upon billions of dollars they're counting on to hopefully to have Majors on as Kang the Conqueror. The emergency backup, according to the story I'm hearing this morning, is that if Majors somehow finds himself guilty or has more legal trouble, they'll simply drop the character and recast him with someone else. But it is going to be Kang, moving all the way to Avengers, Secret Wars, and also the Kang Dynasty. Everyone, thanks for joining. For the Ian Hoodrat Network, I'm Dan Delatorre, and this is Comic Book Corner.